Hello and welcome to Engage, the program that focuses on community-engaged learning, service, and research at Mississippi State University. I am your host, Meggan, and today I am joined by special guest Alexis Gregory, Professor of Architecture in the College of Architecture, Art, and Design. Hello and welcome to Engage.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm really excited to talk to you about the community engagement project with the Learn and Grow Garden at the Boys and Girls Club. But before we jump into that, I would want to know a little bit more about you, your background, how you came to Mississippi State, where you're from, anything you want to share.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Virginia, and I went to Virginia Tech for my undergraduate degree in architecture, worked for about 10 years, and decided after being a professional architect I wanted to be a professor. Okay. So I went to graduate school at Clemson University, so 2 land grant schools, just like Mississippi State. And then after I graduated, I worked for 5 years at Savannah College of Art and Design, which is really where I was able to start working on community engaged projects, even though I did work with nonprofits like Audubon Society, Environmental Defense in my professional career. I started working with Habitat for Humanity in Savannah, and then when I came to Mississippi State in the fall of 2011, I was able to continue that working with the Starkville Area Habitat for Humanity.
So the first community engagement project that you were involved in was with Habitat for Humanity?
Correct.
Okay. And what was it that you all did for them or worked with them on?
So the first project we did was just a hypothetical project where my students designed houses and they met with Habitat for Humanity and just learned more about them and got ideas for them, and then they learned about working with a nonprofit client and a real client. And then we ended up designing a house for a homeowner the next year and working directly with the homeowner, which is unique for Habitat. Typically the homeowners don't get to design their own home. They get a home that's pre-designed, one of the Habitat standards. So it was an amazing experience for the students because it was a family of 4, a husband and a wife, a little boy and a little girl, and the children especially were very excited to work with the students. And the students really enjoyed working with the family and getting to know them in addition to working with the real client.
So Habitat for Humanity, that was year 2000 and...
About through 2013.
Okay. And then after that, we started this idea, which is now...
The educational garden.
Okay.
Right.
And okay, you want to...
Yeah, so when I first moved to Starkville in 2011, I was reading the Starkville Daily News and saw about a project that Kathleen Ragsdale at the SSRC here on campus had done with the Boys and Girls Club, expanding the small amount of gardens that they had at the time. And I realized when I went out there that it needed to be expanded further and needed to be updated. And so the unit director for the Starkville Boys and Girls Club at that time was really interested in it, and so we ended up proceeding from there, moving into a class in the fall of 2014 where my students designed and constructed part of the idea, and we worked with lots of different partners on campus as well.
And so what is the kind of the mission of the Learn and Grow Garden?
So yeah, the idea with the Learn and Grow Garden is to educate kids on vegetables, because so many of them think that vegetables come from the grocery store. They don't realize that vegetables grow out of the garden, that they could grow their own vegetables. And once children start learning that, they get fascinated and they actually eat vegetables that they grow themselves, which we all know parents have trouble getting kids to eat vegetables in the first place. So it helps them learn about science, it helps them learn about self-sufficiency, and then hopefully that translates into their parents as well. They can show their parents that they can grow their own vegetables. And so it's really also meant to help with Mississippi's issues with diabetes and obesity, and just how we have food deserts in a lot of the low-income communities, which is where a lot of the children who come to the Boys and Girls Club come from.
And so a garden at the local Boys and Girls Club, a lot of partners involved, right? So you want to discuss the partnerships?
Absolutely. So the Boys and Girls Club, we work both with Nadia Colombe, who is the director of the whole Golden Triangle. We work with the unit director at Starkville, and they've had several over the years, so we've been lucky to work with all of those. But I also worked with faculty on campus. So I worked with Brittany Oliver, who's an assistant professor in health promotion, Professor Richard Harkis, who's in horticulture, Suzanne Powney, who's an associate director in graphic design, Kenny Anthony, who's an associate director in curriculum and instruction, and then also Joseph Witt, who's an associate professor in philosophy and religion. And together, we all had different parts to play, so those faculty helped me develop the horticulture aspect of it, the educational aspect of it. As part of the design, we wanted to encourage the kids to think about art and architecture as a field, so the graphic design aspect of it.
Yeah.
We also had a service learning scholar student, Lorianna Livingston, who helped with the graphic design aspect of it and worked with the architecture students. So it was a great collaborative project. And then we had tons of partners who gave us materials for free, like Bell Building Supply and Lowe's and Reed's Metals.
Yeah.
So we had lots of great people who donated things, and then people who just donated money, because I had a very small budget,
Right.
and that allowed us to get everything built over a year, 2 semesters.
And so how many different classes of students are currently or have assisted? And
It's been lots of different classes. So the first class was an official design studio where the students designed and constructed the raised garden beds, an herb garden bed, which was connected to a new landing and a ramp because the exit out into the garden was not handicapped accessible, and they had a master gardener who was on crutches who had trouble getting in and out of the building.
Right.
And then the next semester, we had an elective class where the students built 2 shade structures, which allowed for growing vegetables up the sides of the structure and around the structure as well. And then we've had other students who've come out and done compost bins as service projects with student organizations, students who've come out and planted, like the Horticulture Club or the National Organization for Minority Architecture Students and the American Institute of Architecture Students. And then we just recently did a post-occupancy evaluation course where the students looked at the project and repaired anything that had gotten damaged or wasn't designed as well as it could have been in the original project.
So you have students that are assisting with the garden in a formal classroom sense, and then you have students that are assisting just as volunteers or as part of an organization,
Right.
And then faculty members leading these students. How is the learning, I guess, changed? So if you're looking at the students involved in the garden versus the traditional classroom experience.
Yeah, it's definitely not your traditional classroom experience. And in addition to the architecture students, Dr. Oliver has had her classes come out several times as well. So it's really a great hands-on learning process for my students. The students got to learn how to work with a community partner, and they learned how to design and construct for good or for bad. And then they've done many other things along the way. So my students are always really excited to work with a real client.
Yeah.
And I know Dr. Oliver's students learn a lot by working with a real client, and especially working with children. So that's not very common as well. And so it's an opportunity for the children to see what other people do and maybe get interested in those fields, and to see that people care about them, because a lot of times the children feel like nobody cares about them.
Right.
And so it's really nice to involve our students in a way that they learn and the children learn, and the community partner can be a good partner, an equal partner, and not just something that we're, quote, giving something to, which a lot of our students think service is about. It's not really meant to be service learning. So that's a valuable lesson for our students as well.
Yeah, that's a relationship. There's a partnership and kind of an equal exchange. And so as the students in our classroom are learning, the agency is benefiting, and the children are learning too.
Right.
And then our students are having layers upon layers of learning.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a fantastic project, a great example of community engagement at Mississippi State. And so the agency's benefiting, your students are benefiting, your kids are benefiting. How have you seen any like attitude changes in the children? So they assist as well, right?
Yeah, they get very excited about it. They don't necessarily like to weed, but they love it when they can go out and pick things out of the garden, and they're very proud when they see that something they planted actually produces fruits or vegetables. And so they love to go out, and it's fun because we get them to try new things, like some of the herbs, which they're a little afraid of at first, and then they realize, well, hey, this is stuff that goes on pizza.
Yeah.
So we talk about the herb garden being a pizza garden and stuff like that. So it's definitely exciting. And the kids, again, are very excited to see the same people come out and engage with them. And so again, they get more interested because someone cares about them and is out there helping them with that too.
And so this relationship, 2013, so quite a long time.
Yeah.
And you've learned a lot, right? You've gone through community partner contacts, and so that's can be difficult at times because one agency contact might have different initiatives, right?
Right.
And so you've learned a lot, and so your role, I guess, at Mississippi State, you've taken on some additional roles within the Center for Community Engaged Learning.
Right.
Do you want to talk about what
Sure.
else you offer?
So I was on the Community Engagement Committee when I first got to campus and worked with that for several years. And now I'm on the Service Learning Advisory Committee, which helps faculty who want to develop a service designation for their classes develop their classes in that way. And so because I've learned so much about how do you work with community partners and the ins and outs of working with community partners, that's typically where I'm most critical when I look at those applications, is how are you really setting up an equal partnership? How are you communicating, which has been the biggest challenge, because some community partners communicate differently than others. Even with nonprofits, there's a lot of turnover in leadership because people do not get paid very highly. And so people, change. One leader could have a certain vision, like you said, or a certain priority, and another person can have another vision, and then they all communicate differently. So we've learned over the years, both with the faculty that work together and with the community partners, that we have to always be very flexible and make sure that we are as open as possible with the community partners. And that changes from project to project, where sometimes they're so busy, we have to ask them lots of questions. They don't necessarily come to us and say, this isn't working. So you have to be more proactive with a lot of community partners, because they just do feel overwhelmed for all the things they're trying to do with such a limited budget and limited staff.
Right. So they're always typically overtasked, and then also I always see it as we're a guest in their house, right? And so a lot of times, if you don't have that perspective going in, it doesn't always go so well. So what advice do you give faculty that are getting involved in community engaged work?
Yeah, you need to be patient, and you need to do your homework first, which is something that I learned the hard way. You kind of go in thinking, oh, everybody's going to love this, and this is a great idea, and then you realize, well, wait a minute, it's extra work for them, and they need to be educated on what a partnership is and what they need to put in as well. So really establishing that relationship first before you ever really start a project is really important. But a lot of people get this great idea for a project and they want to start it right away. I did the same thing. And so you have to learn that there's a process. It's almost like being in a relationship. You have to start early, you have to build someone's trust, and then you can start moving on. So that's the advice I give to everybody. Give yourself the time, give your partner the time, go out there and volunteer, spend time out there, really learn what the organization is like before you start suggesting projects that may not fit with them.
And what other kind of initiatives do you have in the works currently, community engagement?
So luckily, because I have a great relationship with the Community Engagement Center on campus, I got another client recommended, Mississippi's Toughest Kids, which is a camp for children with disabilities and diseases that's in the process of being constructed in Crystal Springs, Mississippi. So I'm working with some architecture students who are designing some basic ideas for them to take to architects to then get pro bono work, and then continuing to try to find new clients. So any new ones would be great.
Fantastic. Well, I've enjoyed this session, and you have a wonderful project, and we thank you so much for allowing us to learn more about it today. And so thank you for joining us today on Engage. So go forth and get involved in your local community and make a difference in someone else's life. Thank you.